Hello, and welcome to another episode of Decentralounge, which is brought to you by GlobalStake, your institutional, truly decentralized SOC 2 compliant bare metal staking provider. And today we are very excited. We have Mehdi Lebbar on, who's the co-founder of Exponential DeFi with us. Exponential DeFi is revolutionizing the way that we discover, assess, and engage with DeFi yield opportunities, which ultimately makes it simpler for anyone to become a lender or a market maker. So with a robust background ranging from launching UberEats in London to developing strategies at CloudKitchens and even analyzing investments at the World Bank, Mehdi brings a wealth of experience and management strategy in DeFi to this new DeFi space, or should I say finance experience. But today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into what Exponential DeFi is and what it's doing in the marketplace. So Mehdi, excited to have you on today.
Super excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Jordan and Ryan.
Of course, of course. So let's just kind of start from the very beginning. Curious, what actually got you interested in decentralized finance, cryptocurrency, and how did that inflection point lead you up through today to co-founding Exponential DeFi?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a matter of background, I started my career in investment banking at Credit Suisse in M&A. I was on the London desk and spent 2 or 3 years there. But after learning everything about investment valuation and finance there, I was looking for something more exciting. So I went to the World Bank to do frontier market investing, and that was in Kenya, covering all of sub-Saharan Africa. What was interesting there was the fact that you cannot rely on everything that I was doing in the banking sector. In the banking sector, you could rely on historicals to assess risk. You could rely on regulations. You could rely on other banks. In Africa, I was investing in with higher risk. I was looking into things without any regulations and without historicals to assess the risk. So all of that came back when I was looking into crypto and DeFi. But long story short, after the World Bank, I went to do an MBA in the US. And then I spent a year at Uber, where I launched UberEats in London. I really wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I loved that because we moved from zero to unicorn within a year. That was the most phenomenal time then. And I started in crypto because I had basically I was managing a portfolio and I was looking for an inflation hedge. And to create an inflation hedge in a portfolio, there was obviously everybody was talking about gold. But in order to have gold to work as a real inflation hedge, if you think that there is 5% inflation, you would need 60% of your portfolio to be stored in that metal. And that's not a productive metal. So it creates this problem where you have 60% of your portfolio that is not working, that is not doing anything productive just to be an inflation hedge. That it didn't make any sense. And you cannot take any leverage on gold because it doesn't make sense either. And so I was really looking at this problem, and I ended up on Bitcoin. And that was 2017. Bitcoin was really rising at that time. It was the bull market. And that's where I got into the crypto rabbit hole. Sprinkling a 2% of Bitcoin on a portfolio gets you the inflation hedge. But then I was okay, well, that's a wonderful store of value. That's maybe the future. Let's look into more things. There were all these ICOs on Ethereum. So I looked into Ethereum. I saw that it was doing something that's very different from Bitcoin. And so that you have these two stories, and then you have the story of all these altcoins and projects that were more VC things. After that, I started during the bear market, I had the chance to bring in family and friends into crypto. And so that behind that, the idea was really, hey, let's put a good part of our net worth, maybe 10% each, and invest and bet on the bear bull cycle, basically the 4-year cycle. That got to an 8-digit portfolio at the end by 2021, which was like wonderful. But it was the case for mostly everybody. Everybody multiplied by 5 to 10 during the 2019, 2020, 2021 cycle. And so that was wonderful, but we were all passive investors. And we were like, just like, if you have one trade every 4 years, you're basically a passive investor. And so everybody was looking into getting some yield on top of that. So my LPs were coming with like, hey, BlockFi, let's invest. Oh, hey, Celsius, let's do it. And I was like really excited about like getting the yield. It was super easy, but it was like opaque, and I have like some communications with BlockFi and Celsius over Twitter, asking them for more information about how they where the yield comes from, and it was like obviously no response for them. So when the summer of 2020 came with DeFi, it was really amazing for me because I could like go into a new rabbit hole for DeFi where you like understand where the protocol comes from, how is the asset backed, where is the collateralization level. It was wonderful. It would take 40 hours more or less to assess every yield opportunity in market making, staking, or bridging or lending, but it was like super interesting. And so that got me into like helping everybody move to DeFi yield, which is harder to get access to but transparent. And I was just showing that to Dries, my co-founder, and he jumped out of his seat because he was like, okay, well, this is like obviously a real pain point that everybody is having. I see that you're trying to solve it with yourself, but you shouldn't be solving it. We should have a product for that. And so that led us to raise a first round for Exponential with Paradigm. We got like $14 million, and it's been 3 years. We have built basically two products. One is mostly about risk rating, and that's like I can tell you more about that. And the other one is just one-click invest, which is basically like the ability to invest in DeFi yield and generate yield in one click.
A lot of fascinating things to unpack there, honestly. I'm kind of curious, just hearing your backstory, which was incredibly fascinating, Med. The part in your tale in Kenya, like what was it about that made you wanted to kind of be more risk on, and that kind of led to Bitcoin and everything else? Because obviously this is part of what your platform does, is assessing that risk and trying to help educate people. So maybe just like tie back a little bit to that piece of the story, and then we could start to explore what your platform does, really, because I think we really want to dig in to find out like how this works between the two different versions and stuff. But really cool backstory, honestly.
Thank you. Well, when I was in Kenya, I would like basically work on infrastructure projects such as, like, for example, a railway that would transport coal, for example, from one point to a port, and then have to look into the port itself and how to finance it and build it. There you would have like typically a risk related to counterparty risk. You would have risk related to the counter risk as well, and so on. And all of these risks, you would not have like good ways to assess them. And you would have to go back to the fundamentals of like, what are the facts? What's the fact sheet? Who are these people? Let's look at the track record of them. And all of that got us to basically create a new framework for like assessing risk, like, a little bit like insurance companies do. It's like, okay, well, we don't know, but based on these objective facts that we know about these persons and the people we're dealing with and all of that, would be able to structure deals. And it was like wonderful because in there, like, you would have like 30-40% return on investment on a year-to-year basis, with just structuring it the right way and putting the right people around you, which is like very different from like advanced economies where everybody has a lot of competition into doing everything the same way. So that was the same thing that happened when I was in DeFi. It was like about looking into the risk for a protocol. Well, how are you going to assess a risk for a protocol? And that was like a good question. Everybody was like, all right, well, if there's a backdoor, it's riskier. Yes, of course. If there's a multisig, it's less risky than if it's a unique wallet, but it's even better if it's a DAO. And so you start to have all these risk vectors. And how do you organize when you enter a pool? You have a risk for the protocol, but also for these assets. If there's an issue with the asset, it's also a risk. If there's an issue with the chain, it's also a risk. So we started to say, all right, well, there are principles there. We have to compound the risk between risk, the protocol risk, and so on. But you also have composability of DeFi. Like, you could have a pool that is doing market making on Yearn using Curve, for ETH and STEET itself having like a protocol like Lido behind it. And so what we started to do is like we built the DeFi graph at Exponential, which is like these links of all these dependencies one-to-one between all these protocols and assets and chains. And we brought everything together. We did like we assessed the risk for every element, and that's like 5,000 things. And we brought all of that together, in a way that very simply, where you go and you say, okay, I want to invest in Yearn doing market making on ETH Steve. Well, the risk rating there is an A or a B or a C or a D or an F. So we did the risk rating that way, but we also explain how we calculate the risk and what's the grade of every element inside. So we have this dual part of like making it simple without taking out the accuracy, making it simple for people to do their job, which is like invest in the right opportunities and assess the risk. While like if they want to deep dive, they can do that.
I'm curious from an educational standpoint. A lot of people that are entering the space now, primarily on the institutional side, are more TradFi focused, and they're still trying to wrap their head around DeFi and what everything is. So when users register an account with you and use either one of those respective products, how does Exponential go about educating them in any capacity or hand-holding, et cetera, throughout the experience?
So we have three things that we do. We have a learn section that goes into like everything from scratch. Like, and we have this new video that we are going to launch next week that is going to basically like explain where the yield comes from, how DeFi works, like just the basic things, so that like, because when you think about it, like everybody gets jumps into DeFi and we don't know where to start. And so we're like really trying to work on that part. We have something that's much more advanced, which is like for like protocols to come and talk about risk. It's really like almost a podcast and research. Basically, what before we start even like to start a coverage for a new protocol, we're gonna do like that discussion in order to look into the facts, tell them about what looks risky, what they should improve. And as you can think of it, like we have the highest standards for DeFi in terms of decentralization, what should be. So we push them a little bit of like, hey, you're multi-sig 5 out of 8, you have too many people who know each other, maybe you should bring in more people and things like that. And yeah, and finally we have this newsletter we have that we send every week to everybody who comes on the website, and where we discuss like really things from like from the easiest ways, like what is DeFi, how does the WBTC work, what's the risk behind it, all of these things.
Very interesting, highly needed, definitely something that new users, whether they're institutional or not, still need their handheld. Another quick follow-up question that I kind of had is in regards to the actual layer ones that are able to interact on your platform. So most of the TVL out there is in the Ethereum marketplace. I think it's like roughly 48 billion today, and then Solana's close behind at like 5 or 6 billion. But like, which of the layer ones or even of the layer twos are you finding that most users are flocking towards? So that's kind of the first part of my question. And then the second is these new protocols that are being built and launching. How do they come to you guys and ask for exposure under your platform? How do you work in partnerships with new protocols?
Yeah, so in terms of the layer ones, it's mostly an EVM-based world for sure, and it's working pretty well. The only pain point there is bridging. When people want to move their assets from one chain to another, it's almost like moving from an ecosystem to another. There is also like sometimes when you want to go back and like divest, it takes 7 days for you to do that, and so those are the hard parts. We see very interesting yield happening on Arbitrum, even more so on Base. And so we're launching Base this week. Solana is very interesting for new types of assets, the memes and all the altcoins. A lot of things are happening there. The TVA is not as big, but we are working on like launching Solana in about a month. Solana is also like one of the investors, Solana Ventures, for us. So we think that that's a very interesting ecosystem for altcoins. It is a higher, riskier ecosystem than everything on Ethereum and EVMs, because everything on Ethereum and EVMs makes sense for TradFi people. Whereas Solana is a lot of fashion and like current and very exciting, and but very different. We are also looking into Bitcoin layer ones, or Bitcoin. The right way to say it is Bitcoin layer twos, which are going to be L1s actually. Because we think that there is a lot of interest for Bitcoin yield. A lot of Bitcoiners, despite the fact that they're maximalists, there's a good tranche of that and so on. A lot of Bitcoiners are interested in getting yield because they want to invest in Bitcoin over the long term. And so when you are a passive investor in Bitcoin or any asset, you are looking for yield opportunities. And so on our platform, actually, we see that Bitcoin yield is taking 1/3 of the TVL, whereas it is not even 10% of the pools out there. So they take actually the lion's share. We are doing everything we can to research, look for Bitcoin yield on DeFi that makes sense. And so right now we have 3 investment opportunities available for Bitcoin. The highest yield is being 10%. Bitcoin yield normally is around 1 to 2% because it's a deflationary asset, whereas like Ethereum starts at 3% because that's staking. And on altcoins, you get much more. And on stablecoins, you get about 8% when there is like the bull market, because there's demand for it from leveraged people. And it usually goes down to the 5% risk-free rate almost when it's the bear market. Anyway, the way that we deal with the protocols is a little bit of there's a little bit of a Chinese wall there. So on coverage, we don't necessarily need to get in touch with them. We just try to cover all the protocols that are above a certain threshold. Right now, it's $10 million. We're moving to $1 million of threshold, so covering many more protocols in TVL. And for anything related to getting and being able to find an investment, it's not related to anything but like our investment committee. So we have a team who's doing the research on all the best investment opportunities, and they need to bring into basically a little investment board inside the company where they showcase the investment opportunity, where we look into it and say, like, try to find good reasons to have it or not have it, and we decide there whether we list it or not.
Awesome. That answers the question perfectly. So I guess last question I would kind of have is in regards to like the next bull run that we anticipate coming relatively soon. What do you see as the future of decentralized finance over that next wave? What is Exponential going to do in regards to that next wave when it comes to DeFi? Mainly, if you can throw out any maybe major partnerships that you guys are working on or new ones that you just landed, just kind of prime anybody that's listening to see where they can fall into play.
Yeah, absolutely. So we see DeFi more of a long-term play over the next like 5 to 10 years. And so in that 5 or 10 years, we see that there is a real disruption happening from DeFi for a lot of things in TradFi. When you think about it, if you try to get a loan today for like, I don't know, when I just arrived to the US, I was like, I didn't have a credit score, and I needed like $10,000 because I really wanted to buy a motorbike. And and instead of waiting for my first check, I just like put the Bitcoin as collateral and got my $10,000, paid it back after like 40 days. The whole cost of that was 0.7%, which is very interesting for the lender because 0.7% on a monthly basis, that was almost like 7% yield over the year, fully collateralized, and so like almost risk-free. And so what's interesting there, if I try to do that in TradFi, I would need to go to a banker, or because I didn't have a credit card then, I didn't have a credit score, to take a personal loan based on basically not much in terms of guarantees. They would not accept my Bitcoin as collateral. And it would take them about 2 weeks to tell me if that's okay with them. And they would probably not do it, or if they do it, they would have to charge me the salary of that banker and that investment committee. And so that would not work. And so what we're thinking is that there is more and more like opportunities for DeFi to take over. And there's that disruption theory from the cost basis where DeFi is more efficient than TradFi. So we think that there will be like more and more use cases in DeFi over the next 5 to 10 years. The most important part is that wallet and that interaction with the wallet, which actually excludes 80% or 85% of humans. And obviously, like, I cannot tell my most of my friends, certainly not my parents, how to use MetaMask or even like any of the best wallets. And that's where we started. We started there. We started, oh, well, if that's not going to work, but everybody has a Fidelity or a Schwab account, well, we can just give them the Web2 experience of Coinbase for DeFi. And so that's the way that we're looking into it. Now, when it comes to the market, I think this cycle is a little bit interesting. It's not exactly the same as the last one or the last two. I think we're going to have much more things at the back, because we had like this little pump right before with the ETF. We're actually pleasantly surprised. It would have been a very, very long bear market if there were no ETFs. So I believe that there will be volatility until the US election. There is no other way. And based on, like, if it's the Democrats, it's going to be painful. If it's the Republicans, it's going to be probably a pump. But in all cases, there are like fundamental things that are happening related to the Bitcoin cycle. 6 months after the halving, there is less and less supply of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is king. It pumps. It's gonna do its thing. That's the way I'm looking at it personally. And so I think that we are just gonna have a cycle that is like later, and it's probably a good thing as well in any case.
Really great overview and insights into the market and where this is all trending and going. What's the best way for people to reach out and learn more about Experimental.fi, to connect with you? Like, do you prefer being reached out to Twitter, LinkedIn, Telegram? We'll obviously link all of these so people can reach out to you and learn more, and then we'll include the website and everything else. But what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Well, we are very active on Twitter for sure. And we are also like responding to everyone who asks us anything on our website. We have this little intercom widget. As soon as someone writes, you have like 12 people looking at it. We're really eager into getting feedback from users and so on. So don't hesitate to come on Exponential.fi.
We will link all of those, so that way, hopefully you'll get some people typing in, have your 12 people scramble to actually introduce them to your incredible platform. Mehdi, thank you so much for taking the time and having this conversation with us today. Really enjoyed it, and fascinating, especially your background. But I'm going to actually go look at the website myself and check it out, just because you've piqued my curiosity for sure. So for those of you who are watching or listening today, thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of Decentral Lounge. We'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.